Hey everyone. Sorry to spoil your festivities, but I had another brilliant revelation. And it's something I've only come to realize very, very recently. Parents are the children. Children are not the children. Children are the adults. Children are the adults. And it's funny because um, I've lived in Australia for a long time. And this one Aboriginal lady told me that in her particular belief, uh, like literally, the younger you are in this physical world, the older you are in the spirit realm because you've waited so much longer than everyone else in front of you to get a physical body. So the young people, the young kids, are spiritually older than the adults and even the old and the senior citizens. And quite honestly, when we're born in those developmental years, like let's say up till around 8 years old, I mean, yes, it can go up to about like 15, like it goes in stages. Uh, let's say to about 8 or 9 years, you are the most intact that you will ever be, developmentally speaking. That is, notwithstanding any sort of abuse or trauma that you might experience, you are the most intact. You are the most spiritually developed. You're at your most sentient point. And it doesn't even have to sound like fluff because literally the brain at that young age it's called neuroplasticity. It's a sponge. It's literally like a sponge, just absorbing. It's even your skull isn't fully developed, so it's literally like a sponge. That's why kids can learn multiple languages very easily, right? Very, very easily, and other skills. You are truly in touch with the universe, with the surroundings, with everything that this life has made manifest as a child because you're predisposed to it, right? You're naive, which means you're new to the world. But even and it's that idea of purity. While it can be a really good thing, it's most of the time a very terrible thing because of how we end up treating children or because of how children end up being treated and exploited in the most sickeningly demonic ways possible. That idea of purity. And the fact that you haven't been thrown into the grinding meat machine that is this reality. You, like a kid, if a kid has to lie repeatedly, they're already traumatized for some reason, right? They're already kids. Like you can lie, they can lie to be sneaky and everything. They're just learning the rules of the game, right? But a kid is the most honest person you will ever talk to. They will humble you completely. They will make you realize such a point blank truth that you have denied over and over, and you're supposed to be the adult. You're supposed to be the responsible, and yet the kid, like, if you're somebody who's prone to self-harm, right? Let's say cutting your wrist, and other adults see it and say nothing about it, or some do, some don't, right? But then a kid will walk past and be like, why are you cutting your wrists? Or why are your wrists like that? Right? And if you're honest with them, you'll say it in how do I say it? You'll say, let's say, I'm sad, right? You tell the kid, oh, because I'm sad, right? A kid will probably tell you to like just be happy because that is what comes natural to them. It's the same thing some like 80-year-old monk sitting in a freaking what are those mountains called? Yeah, Mount Everest in the Himalayas, right? That is literally the same thing that they would say. Just be happy. Just do it. Just do it. And picture this. The a kid, while they won't say it, there's always that implicit or explicit idea of uh, who will take care of me when I can't take care of myself, right? Who will take care of me when I can't take care of myself? It is a question. It's a question we never stop asking until we get into the fucking grave, into the ground. And it's the reason why children keep getting born into this fucking system. Who will take care of me when I can't take care of myself? And it's an adult that follows through with that decision, and that decision ends up bringing on another child, regardless of whether that child is born with congenital disorders, regardless if they get into an accident, regardless if they have any kind of mental illness or mental issues down the road, regardless if maybe they don't want to be your appointed fucking ass wiper or like diaper changer, right? They have dreams of their own, they have visions of their own, they have, desires of their own. And yet, so many mechanisms exist for you to shame a child into becoming an ass wiper. Because that's literally what you birthed them for. Who will take care of me when I can't take care of myself? And the fact that people are still birthing children off of this sentiment alone just speaks to the level of delusion they have reached. Because aged care has been a thing, okay, at least in developed economies, it has been a thing for at least robust, quote unquote, robust aged care has been a thing for, I would say, 70, 80-ish something years, right? Probably longer than, like, it has been like modern, in the modern sense, right? There are people who study medicine specifically to treat old people, right? They specialize in treating old people. There's nurses that do that. There's all kinds of, the healthcare sector has the geriatric sector, and there are trained professionals in that sector for everything you can imagine. Why then would you fucking need to birth a child? And mind you, this is a child who they will definitely have a lot of their desires and urges to do more or be more suppressed for the sake of the parent. Your parenting style ends up bringing out a child who is anxious, who can't even help themselves. A child who is completely just subservient to any kind of authority seeming figure. A child, he will just walk where they're supposed to walk, even if they're in a place that is their own, they can still be removed because of that deference that was beaten into them in one way or another, indoctrinated into them, just so you can have somebody to wipe your ass and pretty much just be like your teddy bear, essentially, right? It's a very fucking sad sentiment, to be honest. Even though there are people who are hired to do that professionally, right? This is what happens when you develop an economy. You start outsourcing different services to different people. right? That sentiment of uh, who will take care of me when I can't take care of myself, families existed to, like, even healthcare was something people just did at home. Even end of life care, right, was obviously, it still is to some degree. But if you see it right now, end of life care, depending on where you live, is something that is almost a luxury, because most of the time if somebody's dying, they're going to be dying in the hospital. I mean, that's the thing. Because in places where they can't even afford to get to the hospital, yeah, they'll probably just die at home. So, in what sense are the children actually children, right? Heck, the Industrial Revolution, the movement itself slaughtered very many children, not just in Europe, not just in the US, in the European colonies as well. And that's something, you see all the pictures of kids in uh, uh, chimney mine, like they basically just have like all kinds of soot and everything on them. In that very same Industrial Revolution, there were children having their hands cut off in the Congo by Belgians to fuel their growing, developing, uh, to fuel their developing economy. They had their hands cut off for not keeping up with the rubber quotas. You had to rationalize cutting the limbs off of children just to make sure that you had a decent retirement policy at the end of the day. Just to make sure your own children will be there to wipe your ass when you're dying. It really, it's almost a haunting sentiment, just how fucked up the amount of propaganda doesn't even do it, right? It is propaganda in hand with physical abuse, psychological abuse, and propaganda and manipulation and abuse, right? It's that sickening type of combo to have to rationalize something like this. A kid, and it's so funny because they consider the age of accountability in religious settings as like, I can't remember when it was. I think it was in Christianity. I think it's like 8 years old or 9 years old, something like that. And I'm gonna make a video on the age of adulthood because that itself is such a oh man, I'm gonna like that video. Um, how can we say that children are the ones who need to be protected when, first of all, the children themselves did not bring you here? And people will bring up how they had the impulse to reproduce. The impulse to reproduce is not the fucking child, right? It's you. It's your fucking genitals. And in as much as I don't believe in free will, I do believe in conditioning. Because that's all that we have. That's all that we have happen to us when we're born. Your personality is decided, fixed forever within the first 5 years of you being alive. Forever. So if you see somebody's a narcissist, if you see somebody's a sociopath, if you see somebody's irritable, whatever, just know that it started when they were like 4 or 5 years old. And they never had a chance either way. It's a strange thing when you have to pity uh, violent and manipulative people. Because you can say, there's only so much accountability you can have in this world. And yet we hold we hold other human beings themselves to an impossible standard. Impossible. And to us, like if you ascribe to antinatalism, you understand in some way you cannot hold other people to the kind of accountability that you've held yourself to in not reproducing. I would highly discourage you from even thinking that you should compel someone to not reproduce, right? That you've stepped past antinatalist territory. That is a domineering territory. And this is not an ideology that is domineering. It's the fact that you're literally saying, I quit, I check out, I'm walking out of this psychotic system. Nothing about that screams domineering to me. And at least in this reality, you can and you should be accountable for your actions. Because you know those actions have consequences to so many other people. And yet, even the term infantilizing is to show that, you really don't know much, or they don't know much, or they're being portrayed as they don't know much about the world. When you literally birthed a human being who would end up turning into a fucking monster on this planet. And we're supposed to look at them as if they're a demon incarnate. What is it? Somebody once told me that tradition is peer pressure from the dead. And I had to think about that. It is peer pressure from the long dead. These intangible, nebulous, and quite frankly destructive and futile concepts that humanity has attached themselves to is the reason why we have to keep making projections about the population exploding, or when the oil supply is going to run out, or when the ice caps are going to finally melt and sink and drown New York and fucking Florida and all this and Bangladesh is already like 30% underwater or something. It's so fucked up. It's such a fucked up situation, man. It's such a fucked up situation that why is it so bad to say that I quit and my unborn quit as well? I am glad to make the decision of my unborn quitting, right? They're not even here to make the decision, but I'm telling them on their behalf, like, there's nothing you're missing out on here. Honestly, every time you look at an adult, they are just grown-up children. And the fact that they have to rationalize bringing more children here as an insurance policy for themselves makes them even bigger of a child than the child themselves.